The story behind the name Nourished, it really stems from when I was struggling with an eating disorder. Many people just kept saying to me, eat. An eating disorder has an enormous amount of shame because you don't understand why this is happening, why you can't just be better or be healthier or eat more. And it's so psychological when you kind of like rip that barrier, right? That element of shame off, rip the Band-Aid off, you take away its power. And so that's why I feel so strongly about sharing my story. Nobody should have to go through these things alone. Nobody is alone in them, even if sometimes you feel like you are. I really want Nourished to be the place where people can recognize that and move forward. Hi guys, welcome to today's episode of Nourished. We are really going to go back to the why. I'm doing a little solo episode today to kind of address some of the questions that have been coming up over the course of the last few months and the last few episodes that we've released. So thank you so much for continuing to be a part of this community and for supporting Nourished. It really means the world to me, and I'm excited for you to listen to, some of the things I have to say today. The story behind the name Nourished it really stems from when I was struggling with an eating disorder. Many people just kept saying to me, eat. And if you are someone who has struggled with an eating disorder or struggled with an addiction, it's never that simple. When I was thinking about what to call this podcast, I wanted it to be all encompassing. And when you think about the word nourished, it's so much broader, right? It's not just nourishing your body from, the physical component of food. It's about the content that we absorb, the relationships that we keep, the job that we continue to have, the career that we chase. It's so much broader. And every single day, even when you're thinking about the new world of longevity and all of the different tools and the peptides and red lights and workouts, it's even more indicative of how you're living your life. So are you doing all of those things to punish your body? And at the time when I was having my eating disorder, everything was more of a form of punishment. It was something that I had to do. It was not something that I woke up and felt like doing. I was not doing anything intuitively. So the name Nourished really encompasses what it means to live a life with intention and to be more intuitive with your body, with your mind, and honestly, just with your soul. When I was diagnosed with an eating disorder, I really did not know what I was struggling with. I had just lost a lot of weight over a span of, I would say, 6 to 8 months. And it honestly was more of a doctor's visit that I was kind of forced into. So, my mom at the time was basically like, I'm flying to New York and something is really wrong. Obviously, I lived in New York, my family lived in California. So when you go months without seeing someone and then you're looking at their Instagram and watching them, kind of diminish, I think that's where more of the concern came from. Whereas, the people that I was with every single day in New York noticed these changes gradually, not so shockingly when I would post another photo on Instagram. And so when I walked into the doctor's office, the first thing we did was my heart rate. And immediately from my BMI and my heart rate, the doctor knew what was going on. And that's when he said, you are anorexic and orthorexic. And that came after I told him kind of like what my day in the life consisted of: the overexercising, the undereating. And so there were really two components to it, one being the anorexia, one being the orthorexia, which are very different. Anorexia is very catered towards diet, right? So it's like what you're consuming, it's the rules around food, the rules around diet. And the orthorexia is really overexercising, running your body into the ground. They go hand in hand, right? And usually people who are more like type A, very disciplined, tend to have both. I don't want to speak for everybody, but it's what I've noticed. I knew my eating disorder was really a problem when I got to treatment and I still couldn't bend my rules. I was at the point where I had to be hospitalized. And at that point, you do not have a phone. You are put into a care facility, essentially, where you have round the clock nurses, round the clock psychologists, dietitians, nutritionists, doctors. And basically, the entire goal is to get your baseline back to normal. So that's your heart rate, that's all of your labs, that's the mineral content that's in your body. So, like your potassium, magnesium, all of those things that make your body function. And there's many, many components. I think it really hit me the most when I couldn't get those baseline metrics back despite how hard I tried. Once I started to realize that and was like, okay, I'm going to work really hard, honestly, to get out of here. It was less about, at that point, wanting to actually get healthy. It was more about wanting to get out of that place. But I couldn't. And that's because I had damaged my body for so long. And I think that's the biggest misconception is it's not just 2 weeks of not eating, you have an eating disorder. It's a very slow death. And that is why it's one of the most dangerous mental illnesses, because these repeated patterns essentially take years off your life and take years to correct if you are lucky enough to correct them. And so it was really that lack of ability to actually make myself healthy, even though I felt like I was doing everything right. And as someone who, likes to be in control, who's a high performer, a perfectionist, doing all the right things and still not having your body respond felt insane. I wish somebody would have spoken to me more about like the true mental component of it. I think when I was like first put in treatment, it was so focused on, the physicality, the blood work, the mineral levels, kind of everything I just said, that I don't think I realized the significant mental component. And that's not to say that, I wasn't in therapy for many hours per day, that I didn't have those tools. But I don't think I had enough education around what I was struggling with and how it had happened to me so out of nowhere, right? And maybe it didn't happen out of nowhere. Maybe it was something that had slowly been kind of like habit forming for a large amount of time. But I just really don't feel like I had the education around that. I didn't know what it was. I had only kind of heard the diagnosis when I was at the doctor for that first time. My only understanding of an eating disorder was from the Carpenters, Karen Carpenter, when I was a kid. And I remember my mom kind of like saying it was so sad that what had happened to her, but I had no idea what it was. There was nothing that was ever spoken to us in health class. And I think it's a huge danger. I think it's a huge threat to society now. We have, such young kids that have so much more exposure, right? They have Instagram, everything is tangible and at their fingertips now. And it's not only dangerous for them, but it's dangerous for us because we're constantly looking at our phones, constantly absorbing content across different media outlets. And I don't think that there's any education or protection parameters in place to filter that content and to, give us an understanding of like what is real and what is not, what is real, what is not edited, etc. So I really wish someone would have educated me more. And I hope that that's something we can do more to, the world today. I am talking about it now for the same reason that I just said. I think that we need to have a platform where this is discussed because it's educational, right? Even if it's a place for my own curiosity, which is what Nourished truly means to me. I want us to be able to talk about these things. I don't want them to have so much shame around them. And an eating disorder has an enormous amount of shame because you don't understand why this is happening, why you can't just be better or be healthier or eat more. And it's so psychological. And I think when you kind of like rip that barrier, right, that element of shame off, rip the Band-Aid off, you take away its power. And so that's why I feel so strongly about sharing my story, about having these conversations around mental health, around eating disorders and addictions, because I don't want there to be shame around them. I really want people to feel comfortable discussing them so that they can heal, so that they can put it out there, they can ask questions, they can be curious, and they could get answers that will hopefully help them. Of course, I still have bad days. I really do believe that when you have an eating disorder, when you have any type of, mental health issue, addiction, whatever it might be, I think you are always going to have bad days. And I don't say that from a negative perspective. I say that, we're human and we struggle and, sometimes people relapse. And that is okay. Not every single path is a straight line. A lot of them have detours. I definitely still have bad days. And it typically happens more when I'm really stressed out. I notice myself more in the punishment realm, if you will. Like, I'm not doing things that are like nourishing my body. If I'm super anxious, I'm like, I have to just like walk and walk and walk or whatever it is. Like, I have to kind of like just keep moving and I can't sit still. And, that's not to say that it's every single day or every single time. Sometimes it's easier than not for me to regulate my nervous system. But there's other days where it's not. And I feel like I'm not out of control, but that I lose control and that it's a little bit harder for me to regulate my nervous system. I feel the need to, work out more, to be more focused on, my scale or whatever it is. And usually during that time when I'm super anxious, I'm not hungry. And it's not something that I'm like actively focused on. It's just, I don't have those hunger cues. And so for me, that's typically what it looks like more. Nourishment to me today means doing what feels good. Today, this morning, as an example, I had this workout planned and I wasn't really sure if I wanted to go. And I was like, okay, you know what? I feel like I need to work out harder. I'm going to do my own thing. I'm going to do my workout in the sauna. And I got on the treadmill and honestly, I was like, that's just like not what I need today. I'm going to go get a matcha. I'm going to enjoy my morning. I'm going to go to my workout class that's a little bit easier on my body. And I'm going to be around my community. I'm going to say hi to my friends that are there. And look, was it in a 160-degree sauna? No, but today it felt amazing. I saw one of my girlfriends who I haven't seen in a long time, gave her a huge hug, and it felt good. And so I think nourishment for me now is doing things with intention. It's waking up, it's seeing how I feel. If I'm hungry, I'm eating. If I want a glass of wine later in the day, I'm doing it. I'm not creating these rules that are so rigid that they can't be broken. And so I really think it's just living an intentional life, being intuitive, and listening to your body and your heart. The podcast has been a huge component to my recovery. Obviously, it's happened, many years later because it took me a lot of courage to feel comfortable talking about it. Even after being in recovery, I still had a lot of shame around it. And I still felt like there was such a negative connotation that people would look at me differently. Thank God that has not been the case. If anything, there's been so much love from, the audience and from my friends and my family. But it's definitely a huge place for my healing and continues to be because it's a space where I can be curious, where I can sit down with guests who are experts in medicine, in nutrition, in gut health. It's founders, it's people who have had their own trauma. And that's the goal with Nourished, is a place where we can, talk about these things and not allow them to hold shame. And that's super powerful. And that's one of the key ingredients to recovery. It's people that have had these life catalysts. It's doctors that have taken a different approach to healing. And that really relates to my personal story because I had a really hard time navigating the healthcare system when I was going through treatment. Those experiences that have shaped my desire to find alternative methods of healthcare and precision medicine and ultimately shape the guests that we have on Nourished. If you or someone you know is struggling with an eating disorder, I would say first and foremost, try to get them to talk about it a little bit more. Never be forceful. And I would always say try to recommend a mental health professional because those are the people that are truly going to be able to navigate the conversation. I think the most harmful thing you can do is ask what's wrong with them, tell them to eat, give them kind of like those negative words, negative feedback, it just never feels good. And someone who is struggling with something is most likely not going to react to something that feels a bit passive aggressive or something that makes them feel like they're not normal. So, what I would say is, be vulnerable. Come from a place of love, come from a place of vulnerability, come from a place of care and respect, and truly be present when you're asking, like, what's going on? Like, I want to help you. I love you. Talk to me so that I can help you. And if that doesn't work, and if that person isn't comfortable kind of telling you, then say, hey, can I help you find someone who can help? Maybe find someone who knows a little bit more, someone that is a mental health professional that can create a safe place for you. That is most important. And first and foremost, like, lead with love. My goal with Nourished is for every listener to, one, learn something, two, feel acknowledged in the fact that they're not alone in whatever they're going through, and to see and witness someone else being brave so that they maybe have the courage to share their story and to hold less shame around it. Nobody should have to go through these things alone. Nobody is alone in them, even if sometimes you feel like you are. They happen to many people, and I really want Nourished to be the place where people can recognize that and move forward. Thank you guys so much for this community that we've created. Honest to God, anytime I feel like I, don't have the motivation to come back and do an episode or whatever it is, like, someone brings me back to my why. It was just yesterday that someone said, I had a moment alone and the first thing I did was listen to your podcast, and it completely changed the course of my day. So honestly, it means so much to me, and it gives me the strength to keep going. I want this to be a huge community. I want it to be a place where shame does not exist. So I take any and all feedback so seriously, and I would love your suggestions or requests for different guests, people that you want to hear from, people who would love to share their story. I would love to talk to them and give them a platform to do so. So please continue to support Nourished and go like, subscribe, and listen to wherever you listen to your podcasts. But, it truly means the world to me, and I'm so happy to have you all.